Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. Welcome. We're here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We're also here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. following the news, and we podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and other locations across the internet. We are also on YouTube where you can watch these conversations, and we hope that you will. By the way, those times that I mentioned earlier, we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. We hope that you'll subscribe to the podcasts and or videocasts and select notification so that when a new conversation such as this one is posted, you will be notified, and then you can tune in or watch and maybe get something new from it. I'm looking forward to getting something new from our guest on this program today. Before we get there, I just want to remind you, too, that if you'd like to be a part of what we are doing and you'd like to support us financially, we'd be gratefully appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you to those who have helped and to those who will. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask you, to whom are you sending? The email address is richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. We also ask that you spend time during the decade of perfect vision, going within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listening to that still small voice. We hope that you'll take time to do that. And I'm sure that's going to come up in our conversation with our very special guest. And I should have asked before we started the program, but I'm going to take a shot, right or wrong, and all due respect to my guest, whose name is Alejandra. So it's yes. The J is an H. Thank you very much. Alejandra G.Brady, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Richard. I appreciate it.
This is going to be a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to mention the title of this book in its original context for those of you on the podcast and videocasts. For those of you listening to the broadcast, it's going to be slightly modified. The title of her book, which has to do with overcoming fear and accepting spiritual gifts. In her case, in Alejandra's case, her spiritual gifts. She's written this book entitled, I Just Can't Make This Shit Up. Okay, that's the title of the book. And of course, it is rather provocative, very interesting. Why did you choose that title, obviously knowing that it would potentially create some issues with radio and television?
It's a great question. I chose the title because I really couldn't make this stuff up. I had no intention of writing a book, first and foremost. In the middle of a meditation, I heard a voice, and the voice told me that I would be writing a book. And I said, no, thank you. And came back for my meditation again the next day and the next day and the next day. And for 5 days straight, I got told that I was going to write a book. And I just said, about what? Like, who cares? I was 50 at the time. I'm almost 57 now. I said, who cares what a white, privileged, middle-aged woman, who's had a good life has to say? And I got told, just start writing down what happens to you. And I'm like, all right, fine. Because then I got tired of just being told every day I was going to write a book. So I started writing stuff down. And the more that I wrote down, the crazier my stories became. Like, the stuff that was happening to me was insane. I think that if I had to write a script for a movie, I couldn't have made up some of the stuff that actually happened to me. Things like one day I'd be told the word Sedona. I'd never heard the word Sedona. I didn't know where it was. I hadn't heard about it. 3 times within 24 hours, somebody said, have you been to Sedona? You need to go to Sedona. And I'm like, what is Sedona? Where is Sedona? Why do I need to be in Sedona? 10 days later, I owned a home there. No joke. 10 days later. And it ended up being where we moved during the majority of the pandemic and where this book was born, where I wrote the majority of the book. So, once I surrendered and said, fine, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to write about? Stuff just started happening. And then I was at a spiritual retreat And the spiritual thing was kind of new to me. So I went into a session with a woman I've never met. She has no idea who I am, that I'm writing. She doesn't know anything. You know, they see one client after another. I walked in and the first thing she said to me was, "What's the title of your book?" And I said, "Excuse me, how did you know that I was writing a book?" She goes, "But what's the title of your book?" And at that point, I was like, "Well, how I healed." And she goes, "No, no, 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 no. What do you want to call your book?" I'm like, "I want to call it, I just can't make this shit up." She goes, "Well, there you go. That's the title." I mean, that was within the first 30 seconds of my meeting this woman in Miraval in Tucson, Arizona, who I'd never laid eyes on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how she came to be. And that's why I feel so strongly about her. And, it's too bad that I do have a few hiccups. They're not problems, they're just hiccups. But I feel that the book is meant to help people who are also going through spiritual awakening. So the people meant to find it are going to find it. And I feel very, very certain about that.
What we're all about here on this program, of course, is helping people to raise their consciousness, to better
Mhm.
understand where we are. We try to give people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. But we also are looking for those new ways of living, because you only have to look around. The old ways just don't work anymore. They
No, they
don't.
don't.
I
They
mean,
don't.
look at what we're going through and what we seem to be putting ourselves through. And I say that in that context because I don't care who you are and what you're going through, you're not a victim. There
Right.
are no victims. There never have been. I don't care what other people are saying about them versus us. Because of them, we're in the fix we're in. No, we did whatever it is the fix is, we did it to ourselves as an individual, as a community, or even as a country for that matter, or globally for that matter. We did all of this to ourselves. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And I mean, that's really what makes us who we are, isn't it? It's all of it, the light and the shadow side. And one of the key words that you use here has to do, and you've alluded to it, of course, is synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the unusual, the strange, the bizarre is like, you got to be kidding. I no, I can't. Yeah, I guess it can, because I went through it. I lived through that. Um, we were sharing earlier, folks, about our respective journeys to Ireland, as everyone knows, is my favorite place to hopefully spend whatever's left of the rest of my life. I'm 64. I hope it's another 36 years or more. I'd love to spend that in Ireland. I just haven't found anybody yet who is willing to adopt me, but I'm still working on it. And I remember a specific instance, talk about synchronicity, where we were out on Inishmore, the island, and there was this granite fortress that had been built. There was this giant granite slab, and it hung out over the cliff on the western side of the island. I wanted to get some pictures seated on the end of the granite slab. And so I slowly worked my way out there, and I sat my feet. If my shoes had fallen off, I would be going back barefooted. But I dangled my feet over and I started taking pictures on either side and below and everything. No fear, none, zero, right? And then I crawled back off the slab. And of course, my wife at the time was asking me the whole time, "Where did you say the insurance policy was?" And my hat that I had bought, that wool hat that a lot of people like to wear in Ireland, fell out of my vest that I was wearing. And it was laying there on the slab. So I had to crawl back out and get it. No problem. Got it and came back. And again, no fear until that night when we crawled into a nice, warm, cozy bed in that stone cottage that we were staying in. And I was out of my mind with fear. And I'm keep telling myself, why are you afraid? You're you're not you're not out on that cliff anymore. And I found that rather interesting that even happened. And I've never truly understood. And there are times when I try to give up the need to know why.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that was it was an extraordinary experience to actually physically crawl out there and take the pictures and
Mm-hmm.
so forth and experience that. And then later to experience the fear after the fact. We hold on to things like that all the time. And you had to work through your own fear as well as, in that regard to finally see that you had spiritual gifts and then to find out what those were?
Mm-hmm.
What was the catalytic moment for you?
It was again when I was 50. Kind of all of this came to a head when I was 50. I've now, being on the other side and having connected the dots, I've had really incredible gifts since I was a child. I've been able to see people who have passed. I get messages, a lot of things, but I never connected the dots. I thought those things happened to everybody until then I found out they didn't,
Hmm.
Um, but when I turned 50, I was just recovering from my second spinal fusion. And I was told that then I needed cervical fusion. So it's kind of interesting. My throat got slit open, right? So the cervical fusion is anterior. So they cut open my throat and I have a titanium plate with 6 screws in my throat.
Oh my.
I was just recovering from 2 rods, 6 screws, metal cage, cadaver bones in both my lower lumbar and my cervical. That had happened to me 3 years before that. I had scoliosis as a child, so I knew at some point I'd need the lower cervical ones, but or the lower lumbar, but no one ever told me there was nothing wrong with my neck. That came out of nowhere. But what I have come to learn now is I wasn't listening. Spirit was trying to get my attention. Spirit had been trying to talk to me for some time. And I'd go through surgery after surgery and I'd just bop right back up and get right back on that hamster wheel and do what I was doing. And I wouldn't take the time to stop. Well, when they slice open your neck and put you in a neck brace for 8 weeks, you don't have a choice anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't drive. I couldn't cook. I couldn't do all the mom things. We have a child who at that point had just graduated from college, but still was around. Um, I couldn't even read because your neck is held perfectly straight forward. So you can watch TV, you can meditate, you can rest, you can rest and you can stop. And I was forced to stop. And it was when I was forced to stop that all of this stuff started happening and all of these synchronicities started coming together. That was when I decided that I wanted to study Feng Shui. So I am a Feng Shui expert. I do consultations all over the world. I'm an interior designer as well, not just an author. Author's kind of like third now on my hyphens. I'm an interior designer. I'm a Feng Shui expert. And I had feng shuied my house. I had hired somebody to help me get ready for this surgery. And I did what she said. And after I did what she said, the energy in our house shifted so drastically that I decided I needed to keep going and I needed to do this for other people. So when I decided to do that for other people, I also realized that the clients I was going to attract, or hopefully going to attract, probably knew a lot more about spirituality than I did. So that's when I started diving into meditation and different modalities and just went down that beautiful rabbit hole, that you can go down and all the different things that you can do and learn. And that is how it all began. Then that is when I was told during one of those early meditations that I would be writing a book. And it all just kind of unfolded from there. And I had to go back and look at some dark stuff. I was adopted as an infant. Those people found me later in my life. Called me evil when I told them that I had spiritual gifts. So a lot to process along the way and a lot to understand that, we are all on our own individual journeys. And I wanted other people who were going through spiritual awakenings to know that they're not alone. Because I do feel that a lot of people are going through them now. It definitely has opened up. It's a whole different thing than it was even 10 years ago to be able to talk about this. But even the
Mhm.
people closest to me, my husband, of 34 years, I did my very first past life regression, and it was all about using my voice, going out and telling my story. It's to me, I don't find it a coincidence at all that the throat chakra is the chakra that now has cadaver bones and everything else. I'm like, how many people are in here now? I don't know how many people are in me at this point. um but I got home, I told him what happened. I write about it in the book because it's a longer story, but it was all about using my voice. And the first thing he says to me is like, you're not going to say this to anyone, right? They're going to think you're crazy.
Mm.
So even somebody who is, my partner in life couldn't understand what I was going through and didn't want me to share my story for fear of how I would be seen. So it's hard. It's hard when you're going through a spiritual journey to find people you can talk to find people you can relate to find a community. And so that's what I hope that this helps other people see, is that I was able to do that. And you do lose people along the way. I'm sure you have too, and I'm sure you understand that too. That's also part of the process, but that just means that they taught you what they needed to teach you on this journey, and you can wish them well and move on.
Well, first of all, TSA must have a blast with you.
Actually, believe it or not, it's all titanium.
So it
So
doesn't.
it doesn't go off. It
Oh,
doesn't.
good.
My bracelets go off, but all the metal in my body doesn't go off. I'm like, I'm almost bionic woman here. How does it not go off? But it doesn't.
I'm curious as to whether or not magnets, if you were to put a magnet up to your throat, if it would just kind of stick there, or because I don't know
I
the
don't know. I've
properties.
never tried. It's titanium, so
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what the, magnetic issues of that are. But as of now, I haven't had any issues,
Mm.
thankfully. You know?
Well, yeah, and you made me think of a book that I just finished reading called The Surrender Experiment: My Journey into Life's Perfection. It's by a Michael Singer. And he started out almost like you did, in a manner of speaking, he basically wanting just to find a place where he could meditate. He started to get into that. And so he wanted to find a piece of land where he could build a small little, maybe even a just small yurt or something like that, where he could just go by himself with nobody else around, some isolation, and meditate. And before you knew it, he had this giant compound and dozens of people around, and it grew and grew and grew and grew. And again, he's trying to stay surrender to whatever life brings him.
Mhm.
Is that part of your journey that you have maybe come to, maybe as of the age of 50, which is rather interesting, because for some of you'd say, oh, she's halfway through. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's not halfway through. Maybe
Right.
60 is halfway through, or 70, who knows?
Oh God, 140? I don't know.
Well, I know that there are those who would like to, I mean, we've all heard the term transhuman, meaning that you don't have original parts.
Right.
You do not have original
I
parts.
already don't have original parts.
Right. And the only unoriginal part I have is a lens implant. I've had things removed. I don't have a gallbladder anymore. They took that. I asked them to take the appendix, since they don't know what that does either, but they didn't do
Right.
they don't do twofers. So I thought, okay, fine. And let's hope I don't have to go back to have that one removed. But
Right.
there are people who would love to transfer their consciousness to a robot, if you will, a mechanical body. I mean, and people refer to the human body even today as it's a machine, electromagnetic machine. And go on living and experiencing and seeing through it. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, that sounds interesting. And I'm all into sci-fi. I love Dune and Star Trek and on and on and on. I don't know that I want to stay here indefinitely. It's not that I'm having a hard time or anything. I love my life, and I'm guessing that you do too. But
I do.
I want to see the other realms, the other dimensions. You said you went through past life regression. Have you ever been through life between lives hypnotherapy?
No, that is not something I've done.
They take you back to your previous life, and then you're leaving that life, and your main experience is from the point where you have died in the previous life until you are born into this life, and what
Oh,
you
wow.
experience. And a Dr. Newton has several books and case studies where each individual, independently of the others, shares what they are experiencing. I've been through it myself. And the practitioner never asks closed-ended questions. Do you smell bananas? Do you see this? No. What do you see? What do you smell? What are you experiencing? And so forth. And so you bring that out. It's fascinating. And since you've had a past life regression or a therapy, I'm curious as to how that impacted you in your understanding of who you really are?
Oh, that's a super interesting question. So first of all, I will say I was raised Catholic. So yeah.
Me
So,
too.
when you start there, talking about all this gets very interesting. And it took me a minute. And my husband was raised Catholic. I went to Notre Dame. I mean, for goodness sake, like I was never not in Catholic school from kindergarten until I graduated from college. So this was not something we talked about. This was not something that was openly discussed. Certainly at that time, I don't know if things have changed now because I consider myself very spiritual, but I no longer, go to church in
Mm-hmm.
capital letters. So I think that it has helped me understand a lot of things that have taken place in my life. I feel very strongly about that because things that didn't make sense to me make sense to me now. And it's because I understand that I have been on this planet, plane, whatever you want to call it, quite a few times. I'm quite old. I have been told by multiple healers, this is probably my last rodeo.
Mm.
So I guess I'm willing to stay around as long as I'm needed. As long as I am here to fulfill what I am here to fulfill on this planet at this time. If I'm needed, sure, let me stick around. Let me just stay in, as good as health as possible so that I'm able to do what I need to do. But then at that point, then I'm ready to go have some fun and experience other things. But and I do talk about it in the book. I was one in particular very interesting person. And I was actually told by four different healers in four different places that I was this person. And each time I would laugh. And each time, the first time actually, they smacked me right on my third eye and said, when spirit gives you an answer, you're not disrespectful. You don't disrespect. Like, this is not funny.
Mm-hmm.
But it was such a hard one to understand. And even to this day, I will share with you who I was. I was King Tutankhamun.
Oh, wow.
I know. And at first, which is why, I mean, when someone tells you that, you're like, yeah, right. Like they just made this up. But then when the second person and the third person and the fourth person, and then as I sat with it for years, I realized, well, I mean, I could see if someone tells you you were Isis, you were Cleopatra, you were Nefertiti, like any girl would be like, ooh, I was that. Instead, I was a 19-year-old boy with scoliosis, and I'm like, oh my God. I had scoliosis as a child. I wore a back brace my entire childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know he had scoliosis until I started doing research. However, since the age of 12, I have been absolutely obsessed with going to Egypt. And I finally fulfilled that in March of this year. We went to Egypt with one of the top guides in the world in Egyptology. And I wasn't prepared. When we walked into the exhibit in Cairo, they have a huge Tutankhamun exhibit. They had his mask, they had his sarcophagus. That didn't do anything to me. As soon as I saw his belongings, like his jewelry, and to this day, I'm covered in jewels. I love
Mm-hmm.
wearing jewelry. When I saw his jewelry, the gold, the jewels, if I had been there by myself, I would have been on the ground in a fetal position because it affected me so strongly. I just started crying. My
Mm.
husband's looking at me. We're in a line. There's hundreds of people going through this museum. There's a woman behind me on the same trip that I'm on that I had not met yet. We had just said, hi, how are you? Her name was Laura and my name. She was from Dubai. And she was walking right behind me. My husband was in front of me. And I am like ugly crying. Mascara is running. I have no tissues. Like I just wasn't expecting this, to happen as I'm seeing these things because I could remember them. I literally remember seeing them, wearing them, seeing them around the space that I lived in. And she taps me on the shoulder and she goes, honey, are you okay? And I just looked at her and I'm like, I'm just going to go for it and say it. I go, I was him in a past life and it's just really affecting me. And she gives me the same look that anytime I've ever said that out loud, anybody gives me, oh, poor thing. She's crazy. It's okay, honey. It's okay, And so I turned back around and we kept quietly going through the exhibit. About 5 minutes later, she taps me on the shoulder again. And I thought she was just going to check to see if I was okay. And she goes, you don't know this, but I do energy work and I have scanned you 3 different times because I thought you were crazy. And I go, okay. And she goes, but you're telling me the truth. You really were him.
Oh.
The energy is not lying to me. Like, this is who you were. And I'm just like, thank you. So, I think she was put there to give me that validation in that moment. Like that was a gift, right? I trusted, I believed, I accepted, I surrendered to the fact that, okay, I was this person. I made it to Egypt. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing to collect any soul fragments or anything that's missing. And in his space, I get validated that, yes, you're not lying to me. This is the truth. And I just remember looking at her and saying, thank you. And she grabbed my hand and held my hand the rest of the time we were in there.
Oh,
It was
wow.
just the sweetest thing, you know? And then as the trip went on, you know, we got to know each other a little bit better. And she's just a lovely human being who's an energy healer. She's an American, but she lives in Dubai with her husband. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that just happens to me now. That's like a Tuesday, you know, it's like, you know, because I have surrendered to what my life is now. You know,
Yeah.
and I accept it. If I hear it from a source that I feel, and I can tell, you know, those of us that are highly spiritual, you know this, you can feel when someone's telling you the truth, and you can feel when someone's giving you a load of crap, you know. So I trust the healers that I choose to go work with, you know, just like my clients trust me when they bring me in to heal their homes. And I just trust in everything that happens to me now and accept it as part of why I'm here.
Mm.
I even got to be in the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid. We had a private session and I got to lay down in the sarcophagus after
Really?
crawling into the middle of the Great Pyramid and lay there. And the only words that I heard, people were having all these crying experiences and saying, you know, they felt like they were underwater. I got told just a few words: you are complete.
Oh, great.
Yep.
That's always nice to hear.
Isn't that cool? And I
Uh,
think that's because that was the last piece missing, was him, Tutankhamun, and I got there. I had to go to
wow.
the other side of the world to get there, but I got there. 44 years in the making. I was 12 when it started. I was 56 when I went, you know, but I got there. So
Well,
I trust.
yeah, it reminds me of a conversation my brother and I had. I've shared this before. Um, in a following a family reunion in Florence, outside between Florence and Coolidge, Arizona. So where my Florence was where my mother's parents lived. Coolidge was where my father's parents lived, and we were walking in the desert. It must have been in the winter time, because I don't think I'd be walking in the desert in the summer. And we were having a conversation. I was sharing my philosophical perspectives and so forth. And my brother turns to me and says, "Well, Richard, it's about time you got it." And immediately what came out of my mouth was, "Well, Mike, it's not about when you get it. It's that you get it."
Yeah.
I was 33 at the time. Now, for me, 33 held a great deal of significance, not just because of my Catholic upbringing and Jesus and his crucifixion at the age of 33,
Trinity.
but there was a song by Harry Chapin where the line in the song is, now I'm 33 and I'm starting to question my mortality, and so on and so forth. And that really meant a lot to me when I heard that particular line in that song. And 33, just, you know, it's two threes, it's a six, it's this, it's that, it's the other. And, you know, and the other thing that happened to me too was that I was told, actually some 12 years earlier, no, 13 years earlier, when I was 20. Whether this was the right thing to say to me or not, I just remember it. "Richard, you are wise beyond your years." And I thought about that for a long time. And I questioned whether or not I would be able to maintain that. Will I always be wise beyond my years? You know? Uh, you know, and I'm not going to say whether I have or have not. You know, I'm now 64. I was 20 then, you know, 44 years ago. But I've always
I'm like
been curious.
44 years for you too. I just said 44. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And yet I've been in
Who
this
said that?
business, the
Who said
broadcasting,
that to
for
you?
45. Yeah.
Who said
Yeah.
that to you? Just curious.
I want to say it was the author of a book called The Greatest Miracle in the World. His name was Og Mandino. He has since passed, and I had the great privilege of interviewing him back then. His book, The Greatest Miracle in the World, was a book that brought me to my first wife and the experiences that she and I had together, which over 15 years was actually quite extraordinary. I mean, there are a lot of people who, when I tell them, oh, yeah, she was totally blind too, I say, really? Yeah, it happens. You know? But I think about some of my synchronicities in that regard. And I wonder sometimes about, we talk, and I did use the phrase at the front end of the program, how we give people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. Well, you've heard the phrase or the saying that it's all of the choices that you've made in the past have brought you to where you are. And I take that one step further and say, yeah, even the choices that you, Alejandra, and I made as children have brought us here right now. We didn't know it back then. I didn't know who Alejandra was, and she didn't. You didn't know who I was. And then there's the next step of that says, and the choices that you will make today will determine where you will be in the future. And one of my guests threw in this addendum. The choices that you make today are dependent upon your perception of what you believe the future, your future to be. So if you're a pessimist, half glass empty, you're probably going to be digging holes in the ground, lining them with concrete, filling them with supplies, and waiting for the end of the world.
Yep.
You know what? If that's your perspective, more power to you. It's not mine. And I hope that you can come out of that, because is it not true? And I'm sure you've experienced this and shared it even within your book here. And I'm going to try the title one more time, but I'm going to modify. I just can't make this stuff up. Okay. It's like, okay, my glass is half full. Now, what is it full of? For me, might be half full of a Guinness, might be half full of Irish cream, my favorite beverage, whatever it is, but it's half full.
Right.
What about some of these stories that you talk about in the reference to synchronicity and so forth, and how you got to where you were through some of these stories? And had you ever thought back to, okay, I remember when I decided I was going to turn left, and the prompting I was getting from inside was, no, go right, go right. And I had that happen where I was bicycling to work in Phoenix, out in the farm fields. They were a mile square, the fields. I crossed an intersection, and the prompting was, at the next intersection, turn right. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding. It's going to take me 3 miles out of my way.
Doesn't matter.
So I crossed that intersection, continued straight on. The prompting got stronger and stronger and strong. I was half a mile. And it's like, oh, all right. I turned around. I went back the other way, and I went up the street a mile, then down the street a mile, then came back down to the street I was already on a mile, and continued on. And the lesson that I learned in that one was about trusting. Whether I avoided something or not, they say, oh, yeah, you probably avoided getting hit by a car or something. Well, maybe, maybe not. For me, it was the voice was saying subliminally, are you serious? Are you really serious about not just listening to, but following the promptings?
Yep. No, I agree. And I think the book is that, right? Because I had no intention of writing a book. Why? I had a great life. I still have a great life, but you know what I mean? It's like, I've never wanted to be famous. I've never wanted to speak on camera and be doing all of these things that I'm doing. Like, none of this was even on my radar. My friends of 30 plus years that have known me since the day I got married and before, like, what the hell are you talking about? What are you doing? I mean, and it's 100% because I am trusting that I was put here to do this. I was put here to, raise my son, and he's amazing, and he's off and married, and they're doing their own thing. And so now I have time to focus on not just helping my family, but really helping others. And if I get told, if I get up in the morning and get told to go do something when I had other plans, I'm like, all right, well, scrap my other plans. I'm going to go do whatever I was told to do. And I very much live my life that way now. And of course, no, it wasn't always like that. I mean, I said, funny enough, when the Feng Shui consultant came to my house, I had no idea who she was. I was actually working on, and you and I were talking off air about this. I was working on a baseball player's house because I have a lot of very lovely, lovely clients. So I was working on his house, interior design wise, with his wife. She was way more in tune into energy than I was at the time. And she said, hey, I hired this Feng Shui consultant. She'll come and do my house. She won't charge us travel time if you do a consultation too. So I was getting ready to have the surgery. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Why not? I don't know anything about Feng Shui, whatever. She gets to my house. In 10 minutes, she looks at me and she goes, you're going to be doing this as your career. And I just looked at her. And to this day, I remember exactly what I did and what I said. I looked at my watch and I go, TikTok lady, you're super expensive. Just tell me what I need to do to get ready for surgery. I have no interest in doing this whatsoever. A couple of months later, as I'm recovering after doing what she suggested and having my husband go, oh my God, I cannot believe the shift of energy in you, the shift of energy in the house, the shift of energy in me. And I said, I have to do this. Like, I have to do this for other people. So I reached back out to her and I said, hey, remember me? And, she took me on as a student. Come to find out, she's world renowned. Her book has been translated into 9 languages. She does consultations all over the world. I mean, she's just this huge person that I had no idea had just been in my house because my friend told me to hire her, and then 4 or 5 months later, I get told, you're going to write a book. The next time it happened was I also wrote a Feng Shui Oracle card deck. And this time when I got told you're going to do this, instead of fighting it the way I fought the book and I fought the Feng Shui certification and all of that, I just said, sure, fine, whatever, just channel through me what you want me to do. And within 3 weeks, that one was done. So that's the difference now. Now that I've stopped fighting it and I just listen. And when I know for sure that it is my guides, it is source, it is whoever it is speaking to me at that time, it's not my own interpretation of it, but truly coming from somewhere else, not just what I want to hear. Like, it's not telling me go to the mall and buy Prada boots, it's saying you're going to be doing this to help people.
Yeah.
So I can tell the difference when I want to rationalize something in my brain and I'm really being told to and guided, So I listen to that very, very closely now. And I live my whole life that way now. I really do. And I find when I fight it, things become much more difficult. And there's still some things that I probably am supposed to be doing that I'm not ready to do. And so I just say, not ready, need a little bit more time.
Yeah.
And then I'll get the, okay, every once in a while I get the no, move forward with it. I do have an executive producer working on a show that we hope to pitch like to an HGTV that's would be about Feng Shui, not just these do a house over in 24 hours, but like, how can we energetically shift people's lives by working on a space in their home? So we'll see. That could go somewhere, that could go nowhere. That nudge started 1.5 years ago. It's still going, but there was a writer's strike in between. There's been other things, and apparently things in Hollywood take a long time. I don't know if it'll ever be anything, and that's okay too. I'm okay with that too. It's been a really interesting process and a really interesting education to see how a show is made, what goes into it, how you have to think about things, and it may lead to something completely different that I don't even know of yet. And I'm okay with that too.
Yeah.
So that's where I trust and where I surrender.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm in the same boat with you. I have been sharing this in the last few programs that I have done in regards to my book. And I've been working on it. The initial impetus was back in 2001.
Wow, it's been a minute.
Okay. And it was with my wife, who went through a cancer surgery, chemotherapy, and has been free and clear of it ever since. And I kept procrastinating, or at least that's the way I perceived it. But I'm also a firm believer in divine timing, divine right timing.
Mm-hmm.
And now, somehow, some way, it's like the sliding tiles have been moved around in such a way, it's time. Work on it. And my projected publication date is the 15th anniversary of this program, September 7th. So that is where that's going to manifest. And I'm really looking forward to that. But you talk about the promptings, if you will, hearing getting the guidance. I had a financial decision, an issue that I was dealing with. And all of a sudden I get this prompting, do this. No, 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 that's contrary to the plan that I have put in motion here. No, no, no. And of course, once again, the prompting again and
Sure.
again. And finally, okay, all right. 3 days later, after having followed the prompting, taking the action, if I hadn't done that then, things would have been a whole lot more challenging. So yeah, there is no question. What was it, something that just innately you picked up on, and that you started getting the promptings, you started hearing the voice, what have you, however that manifests for you, and you said, okay, I'll trust this time, but maybe tomorrow I won't. But in other words, and over time, it has become, I don't want to say easier or necessarily second nature, but you trust it more implicitly each time.
100%. No, at the beginning, I was actually quite the skeptic. I'm like, you need to like, show me. You know what I mean? It was not enough to hear it. I'm like, I need like for this to manifest in 3 different ways before I believe you. And I think that's fair. I think a lot of people going through their spiritual journey at the beginning need a lot of validation, a lot of comfort to not feel crazy, because that is what everybody starts calling you.
Yeah.
And now I don't care. Now I'm like, you can call me anything you want. I know exactly who I am and what I do and why I do it. And nobody's opinion matters to me anymore, but at the beginning, when you're feeling very scared and you're feeling alone and you're hearing crazy voices and you're like, oh my God, am I going to need like a trip to the instant? Like, what is happening to me?
Yeah.
It's a big one. And people, of course, have it manifested in different ways. Obviously, you and I are both highly clairaudient, and I'm very clairsentient too. You just know stuff because you know stuff. And I was very, very clairvoyant as a child. And I had an experience in Mexico that kind of shut down my vision because I got scared. And I've asked for it back. It's starting to come back, but not the way it was when I was a child. I mean, people would just sit at the end of my bed and talk to me. And that's scary, but at that point, I just kind of thought it happened to everybody. And when I found out it didn't happen to everybody, it was just happening to me, then I clammed up, because then you're like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why is this happening to me? So it took me a long time to get to where I am right now and to be comfortable in my own skin and to be comfortable talking about this very openly and very honestly. I have lost friends. I have friends that I've had for, decades and decades who just think it's witchcraft, you name it, they'll call it that. And I'm okay with that. They're on their journey. Right. Exactly. They're on their journey. I'm on mine. I can keep things light. We can go to lunch and talk about our kids and, shopping and whatever. But I save my deep conversations for those people that I feel I'm much more aligned with at this point in time. And there may be people who never experience this stuff, in this lifetime. And that's okay too. It's just.
Yeah. Now, women are more, how do I want to put this? Let me back that up and start from the other end. Men are less likely ever, if they're experiencing these things, to talk about that's not what a man experiences. No, that's woo woo. It's whatever it is. Right. Whereas a woman is more likely
to be more open.
My present wife is very empathic.
Me too.
And unfortunately to her detriment sometimes, because she's always picking up on the energy of other people that then affects her, and she thinks there's a problem with her. And I have to keep reminding her, even though this is one of those, I just know that I know this. And I tell her, it is not you. You are tapping into these people that you work with, that, whatever the connection is. And you need to find a way to protect yourself from that energy. You'll never stop being an empath.
Right.
However, you can minimize to some degree. But then there's the other side of it as well. She's also very intuitive. I can't help but share this. I have to. There's a comedy bit on YouTube, on the shorts and reels on Facebook. And it's showing this woman sitting in the passenger seat and the guy's driving, but the comedian is playing in the background going, "Oh, I have the greatest helper. Every time I get in the car, she's so helpful. And she tells me when the light is green, and I say, thank you so much, helper. And if there's a red stop sign, she'll tell me to stop because I get so confused sometimes. And I could be running into bushes and trees and riding on the sidewalk. So thank you so much, helper." Now,
funny.
On the plus side of that, quite honestly, if the guy in this case can be open to that support, even though he can see the light screen, that there's a stop sign and so forth, so what?
Right.
Especially if you're a couple, if you're a team, go ahead and just allow that to be and don't generate any energy over that. And at the same time, and this happens with other things as well, I will get guidance from her saying, you might be better off doing it this way. And as the guy, again, in my ego, not in my intuition, I'm going, but I've already kind of formulated that. And I really have to back that down and say, hold on. She may have something. And there are many times where I don't even question what she says. I don't question it. I just follow. Because obviously she is aware of something I'm not.
Right.
And so I need to let that come in, do you have that kind of situation in your life? And maybe that's where some people, and maybe even your husband, it's like, okay, I got this. Well, yes, but don't you think, and you start sharing that intuitive message. Have the two of you in your years together worked it out to where it's like, this is just the way that it is, and we both need to, embrace it, because you don't want to be stifled to not share those things, because that's why you're given those things.
Right.
And so, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. You finish. Sorry.
I was just going to say, and from my perspective, I have to do the same thing. I have to bring it down, bring down the ego, bring down the personality. And one of the things that I said to her that I also said to my therapist some months ago, I said, when we're working on a project together, unified, it's like magic.
Right. Agreed. So a couple of things. First of all, I wanted to share something for the listeners and for your wife as well, if she's not already doing this, because I am highly, highly empathic, and I will come home sick from consultations if I don't find a way to protect myself. So one thing that you can do, and I learned this from my acupuncture doctor, because one day I was sitting in the waiting room, and, funny enough, it was a man across from me, and I'm sitting there with my legs crossed, and you know how men sit with their legs open and their hands kind of at their knees, very, very man. And I got in there fine. I was totally fine. It was a routine, exam, or with whatever it was with her, just a routine one. There was nothing, I wasn't going in for anything in particular. By the time I got in, my chest hurt so badly. And she looked at me, she goes, "What's wrong?" I'm like, I don't know, but I can barely breathe. My chest is killing me. And she goes, let me see something. And she looked outside and she looked back at me and she goes, that man's wife has breast cancer and she's in the middle of her treatment and he is taking it very seriously. And I picked that right up. You know, since that day, I have started wearing crystals in my bra. So for all the women out there, your wife included, I don't go anywhere without a bra full of crystals because it just kind of helps. It's another layer of protection. And the act of physically putting that on also helps you remember to keep yourself protected. I zip myself up energetically every single day. I ask for my guides to protect me from anything I'm unable to protect myself from, because otherwise, you can just end up on the floor. I mean, you can just take on so much. And for me, it's always physical. That's the way it manifests in me. So that's just a PSA for those of us that are highly empathic. The short answer with my husband is yes. Bless his heart. We started dating when I was 18 years old. We have been together 38 years, married 34 years, because we had to graduate from college before we could get married, of course. It was the 80s. And, he knew me as one person from 18 to 50. And then suddenly I'm this, woo-woo chick telling him that we have to go to Sedona. And when we're there, we're going to have to buy a house. And I'm hearing voices and I'm writing a book and I'm doing this. And I had a past life regression. And oh, by the way, I'm King Tut. I mean, the poor guy's head, I'm sure, is spinning off, his axis at this point. So he was very patient. It took a minute. And I understand that because I am the one who went through a drastic change. He's kind of been the same person, not in a bad way. Like he's not stunted, same, core of a person the whole way through. And I'm suddenly doing all this bizarre stuff, at least to him and to most people around me. So we have had many, many conversations because suddenly I am out there, right? I have followers all over the world. I'm doing things all over the world. I'm doing interviews. I'm doing TV interviews, magazine interviews. So he needs to be on board for me to be able to do this and feel comfortable doing it. And the one thing I said, I will say this, when I agreed, because I was told I had free will, I did not have to accept my spiritual gifts. I could say, no, thank you. I'm not ready for them. No, thank you. It's not for me. And I could move on with my life the way it was beforehand. When I chose to accept them, the only caveat I had is I would like to be able to have my husband stay as my partner, during this, because, and this is very much a stereotype, but I do see it a lot, especially with a lot of the women healers that I've worked with. Everybody ends up divorced. And I understand why, right? You're going one way and your partner's going the other way. And your partner's like, what the hell are you doing? What do you mean you want to go to a sound bath? I thought we're going to the bar tonight. I mean, it's such a drastic shift. And you have to also, as the partner who's going through the spiritual awakening, acknowledge and understand and give them the patience to catch up with you. So then what I started asking for was just like, well, let him see that he has this too, because I do believe my husband also has gifts. They're not like my level, he's, if I'm an old person, an old soul, he's probably a teenager. My son is older than my husband and my son has our gifts and he knows it. And he's 29. He's like, I'm just not ready for them. And I'm like, and that's okay. Just say you're not ready, but he's had all sorts of experiences. So he knows, and that is okay. So we had one experience where it kind of put everything to rest. And now just whatever I say, if I really feel strongly about something, he doesn't question. It was Sedona. I mean, he bought me a house in 10 days, for God's sake. That's pretty trusting on his end, don't you think, for a place that we'd never been to? So that was huge on his end. But we were in Aspen for a wedding, and our friend had a rescue dog that my husband fell in love with. The next day was our 32 years ago, 32nd anniversary. We'd just gotten home, so we didn't do anything because we just spent a week out of town. And he says to me, I would love a dog like Roger, the dog that we're just with, a big dog, because we had 3 little rescue dogs up until that point, all 10-pounders. He goes, I would just love a big dog. And I'm like, sure, that would be great. I go, but he has to be a baby because all our dogs are seniors. And he can't shed because I just can't have a big dog shedding all over the house. He goes, yeah, but it'd be awesome to have a big dog. 8 hours later, and I'm not joking when I say this, it's 8 hours later, we go to sleep. We wake up and there is a dog scratching at our door. And Art goes outside, and it's a big, shaggy ass dog. And we're like, what is this? Who lost the dog? No collar, no chip. You could tell he'd been on the streets for some time. And for a month and a half, we put posters up. We went on all the websites. The only thing we didn't do is the Humane Society said, if we turned him over, we couldn't get him back. Because we said, well, we'll turn him over. And if the owner comes looking for him, obviously, but if not, we want him, we'll take him. And they said, no, if you surrender him, that's it. Like you won't get him back. At least that's what they told us here in Tampa. So that did not feel right, but we still gave them the information and said, if somebody does come looking for this animal, here's our phone number, So we did everything. His name is now Finnegan. He's lived with us for 2 years, and my husband manifested him in 8 hours. So I'm like, so you see, when you are sincere and you trust and you ask, you get. It might not be what you think you're gonna get, and he's a puppy. He was 1 year old, and he doesn't shed.
Oh, wow.
I mean, literally everything we said 8 hours later was given to us. Now, by the way, I did not want a 4th dog. I was not thinking now. I was thinking, sure, out there somewhere when we no longer have 3. So we have 4 rescue dogs, 1 that jumped into my car in Phoenix. I showed you Pepe on screen earlier. Like, this is what happens to us now. And we just accept it. If a dog shows up that is obviously not being cared for and is in bad shape, we have 1 from a meth house. I mean, I think that's part of what we're here to do. These animals know that they have a safe place, and that's something that he participates very heavily in. He's the one that gets up and walks them. He's the one that feeds them. He's the one that does the majority of the work with them, So yeah, he doesn't question it anymore. He's just kind of like, all right, whatever, let's do it.
Well, for a time here in Santa Barbara, we fostered kittens, literally, until they were old enough to be spayed or neutered. And in the process, we started with 4 cats, and those 4 we brought with us from Phoenix. That was an adventure in and of itself.
Yes.
When it was all said and done, from 4, we went to 9. We are now down to 2. And we're also down to 1 dog. At one point, we had 3 dogs. 2 of them we brought with us from Phoenix. They have since passed. And the 3rd dog is still going strong. He'll be 12, I believe, this December. Starting to show those signs in the hips, but he's still puppy-like, which is amazing. And when my wife's dog, before this one, passed, and it was August of, I was a few years back. I said, I want to wait a little while before we get another one to go with my dog, whose name was Makushla. Beautiful white, we think shepherd husky mix, but all white. And I said, I want to give her an opportunity to be the solo dog and be pampered. And we did that for 6 months. Well, in recent days, knowing that we don't know if Angus, who's 12, he's a 100-pound King Shepherd. Yeah.
I have an Angus too. That's the meth house dog. He's a crazy little man.
Well, Angus is that too. He wanted to be the king of the manor. We even took ownership, or temporary ownership, of a beautiful purebred female shepherd named Bridget. And we kept her for, it only was maybe a month or so, but Angus would have, matter of fact, we had trainer after trainer after trainer come over to try to bring the 2 of them together. And Angus didn't want any part of it. At one point, my wife and I were out in the yard with the 2 of them. I had a hold of Angus, and he was trying to go after Bridget. And all of a sudden, his head whipped around and latched onto my left arm. He didn't bite me. He grabbed me, and I knew exactly why. Because he was upset. He's like, I want this dog gone. Unfortunately, we found a home in Northern California for her. They sent us a video of her, and she was running around and playing with all the other dogs and having a great life. And I'm glad she did that. But my wife has told me in recent weeks, when Angus goes, we're getting a puppy right away. And I said, you got it. You've got it. And I know with the experiences that she and I have had over the years, the 26 years we've been together, we started out with 4 Siberian Huskies. They were hers and her ex's.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got then we got Makushla. She was from the Humane Society. Her leg was broken, and we met her across the street. A couple the gal that lived across the street from us worked at the Humane Society and had her at her home, nursing her along. And
Mm-hmm.
she got along with the last remaining Siberian Husky in the middle of the street. It was just like a match made in heaven, and he was elderly. And so she was his caregiver. Then we moved. Then we got another dog named Connor, who was a Shepherd Chow mix, the big curly tail in the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was stocky, like a barrel, with legs. And the three of them moved with us here to Santa Barbara. Since Chemo, the husky, passed, Connor unfortunately got bit by a snake and unfortunately died. And Makushla, of course, has since passed. And we got Angus at 8 weeks on Valentine's Day. And so to go without animals, and you don't have to have 9 cats, okay?
Right. You don't have to be us. We're a little extreme, right? But yes, animals are so important, and they're spirit guides.
Yeah. And they choose you.
100%. Well, that's what we've come to understand, which is why we take them all in, because they do choose us. We've had multiple just off the street. The day I buried my mom, literally in the limo from the cemetery, going to the funeral home to get out of the limo to get into our car to go meet 1,000 people at my parents' house, because my mom was, everybody knew her, and she died very young. There was a dog standing on the other side of the street, literally just sitting there. And my husband looks at me and he goes, "Don't get near the dog." A lot of expletives in between. "Don't get near the dog. Don't touch the dog." And our son's 11. He goes, "Go get the dog, Mom." I'm like, "Of course I'm gonna go get the dog." Go get the dog, Mom. Yes, so emaciated. We thought it was a boy, because I'm like, it's a penis. It was the vulva, because she was so starving and flea bitten and everything else. And so my mom sent us that dog that day. We're all completely convinced. And she died at the exact same age that my mom died, which was 66 in human years, of the exact same thing, a heart condition.
Oh, wow.
End to end, everything the same. But since then is when we kind of opened up our minds a little bit more, because in all our years together, I have bought a dog. I wanted a Yorkie, I have done that too. And now I'm like, I'm not in a place where I'd ever do that again. I would only rescue at this point. But what you don't know, you don't know. But it's just interesting. Yeah. How did you pick the name Angus? I'm curious to know.
Well, it was because of our trip to Ireland. It was a toss-up between Angus and Seamus.
Oh, Seamus is good too.
Yeah.
Good names.
Although since then, because Angus is such a big dog, she's wanted to change his name. I said, no, it's too late. She's wanted to change his name to Diesel.
Oh, no, I love Angus. So our Angus, have you watched Outlander? Have you seen the show Outlander?
Yes, we have, actually.
Okay, so do you remember Angus, the scrappy, dirty little soldier that rode with Jamie? We're watching the show, and I'm like, that, again, this is before we had him. I'm like, that would be like the best boy dog name ever. 3 weeks later, we had a rescue, and they told us you have to change his name immediately because he came from a horribly abusive situation. And I'm like, what do you mean? They go, don't ever call him like blah, 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 whatever they had named him, and said, come up with a name like right now. And I just looked at Art and we're like, oh my God, we did this. It's Angus. It's like, we said we love the name Angus for a boy dog. And 3 weeks later, we had a boy dog named Angus. And ours is 9 pounds, and he's a Chihuahua Yorkie mix. He had no hair when we got him. We don't need to go there because it's a horrible story, but he's great. He's loud. Yeah. He lets everybody know that he needs to be the boss and be in charge, which sounds like the Angus trait on your end as well. And just, living his best life now in Tampa, Florida. But he moved. We drove across the country to Sedona with him. He lived in Santa Fe. He drove back with us. So I'm like, wow, from like a meth house to like living large, dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I had on this program, I had an animal intuitive.
Don't you love them?
Oh, uh,
Oh, yes.
it brought me to tears when
Mm-hmm.
she sent me the message from
Mm-hmm.
Makushla following
Yep.
her passing,
Yep.
apologizing for how things went because she lost the ability to walk hind legs.
Oh.
And for 14, I still can't believe we did it for this long. For 14 months, we put down pee pads. We had her in diapers. We were constantly cleaning up after her and so forth and changing the diapers and on and on. She would eat. She would drink. We made
Mm-hmm.
sure that, she was cared for. And when and Angus was there at the same time because she raised Angus from an
Yeah.
8-week old.
Yeah.
So she was his mama.
Yeah.
And when we released Makushla from her body, not only did he come over and nuzzle her a little bit,
Yeah.
but even the cats that we had at that time came over to, as I put it, pay their final respects.
Sure.
Um, but it's one of those things. The message that I got from the intuitive was number one that Makushla was apologizing, which she didn't need to. This is the
Oh.
way things are, but apologized because she didn't plan on it going this way.
Mhm.
But also how much she appreciated our taking care of her and that she would be, I guess the way it was phrased, she would be with me over my right shoulder.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
I, and I think about that as not only in terms of the animals, but also in terms of my eldest late sister who passed 2 years ago, my father who passed a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
They both passed in the same month, which is rather interesting. I view it as my sister paved the way, and my father, heartbroken at his eldest daughter and eldest child leaving. I remember him saying to me, he says, parents aren't supposed to
No,
leave their
it's not the
children.
way it works. Agree.
No, but
Agree.
he, uh, he decided he was going to go. And so he went on the 1st of March because she went on, I think it was either the 28th or 29th of March the year before. So she sort of paved the way so that he'd have someone to meet on the other side, as it were.
Yep.
Um, but I think about I don't get a voice from my father. I get impressions. Or if I'm trying to pump myself up, maybe I'm going through a little rough patch during the day. All of a sudden, these words come out of my mouth, and that's my dad.
I love that.
You know, um, I've had a number of good friends. My best friend of 53 years. We went through grade school, high school, and college together. He went through a homeless stretch. I wish I had been able to do more for him, but I gave him some advice. I says, "You're still in Phoenix. You still have a network of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Call some of them and see if they even have a garage that you could stay in for a period of time until you get yourself back on your feet." He
Yeah.
did. They did, and he got back up on his feet. Working, got a job, a great job working at the airport and so forth. Um, and I say this because I had a period of tears during my sister's memorial. In the shower one afternoon, I had a sob session over my father after his passing, but I can't cry over my friend because every time I think about him, I can't do anything but laugh because we had so much fun.
I love that.
And I just find it fascinating that a lot of folks sometimes they have a difficult time with the passing of not just family members in terms of humans, but
Mm-hmm.
animals as well. And the reality is that both people and animals are with us for a period of time to be there for us, to be there with us, to bring us messages.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as to the role, and I don't know that it applies in this context. Maybe it does. How Feng Shui plays in this dynamic that we're talking about here. Is there anything
It does. I mean, it doesn't get into like the metaphysical of it all,
okay.
but it applies in that I go in and I help people who may be stuck in grief, you know, are stuck for some reason in their life. And what's closest to you has the most effect on you, right? So next to what you're eating and wearing and sleeping on and being around your family, your pets, your whatever, you know, your house has a huge impact on how you feel on a daily basis.
Mhm.
So when people hire me, I go in and I look at their home and I look at their environment and I see how I can work with their environment to help create the most beneficial place for them possible. I very strongly, let me rephrase that. I very strongly feel that if I had not feng shuied my house, the book would not exist because I energetically aligned my house, which energetically aligned me, which then allowed all these things to start taking place. Because up until that point, this had never even crossed my mind to do. And by the way, one of my degrees from Notre Dame is journalism. Didn't touch it for 30 years. You know? And here I am 30 years later, I'm using it, you know, as part of my writing. But I feel feng shui just helps create really positive opportunities. And again, you know, everyone in your house is affected by it. The animals are affected by it. You know, I always tell people, pay attention to where your animals go. Like, where do you find them in your house during the day? I have a meditation room in my house, and that is where I find my dogs. Whether or not I'm in there, they're in there because the energy is so high vibe. Like animals will feel, and the opposite too. You see them hiding under a bed. There's some stuff happening around your house too that they don't want to be around. So feng shui is just another way to work with energy, you know, and because of the gifts that I have, I'm able to go into a house and feel, see, and talk. And again, why I have to protect myself, you know, because I can take on what's going on in people's homes and the energy that they're giving. And everything matters. I mean, it's all very connected. You know, feng shui is just one modality, just like Reiki is one modality, meditation's one modality, but they're all connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, everything is connected. It's just another way to work with energy. And I mean, your house for most people is your biggest investment. So why wouldn't you want it energetically aligned?
And honestly, whether it's a
Yeah.
house or an apartment, wherever you
Yeah,
live.
whatever your space that you're
Yeah,
living, whatever
exactly.
space. And you
I,
know, I'll work with people's businesses. And as soon as I do usually they hire me for their house. When I do their house and it feels good, then they transfer me to their business and have me do their business, you know, because again, where are you spending a lot of your time?
yeah, yeah. Well, I had a woman on this program talking about feng shui about 2, 3, 4 months ago.
Hmm.
And I was sharing with her the position of certain things in my studio at home, which is where I
Hmm.
do a lot of my work
Sure,
when I'm
me
not
too.
here at the radio station. And she suggested that I needed to reverse the workspace against the wall that it was in, and it
Mm-mm.
needs to go on the opposite side of the room because it was on the west wall and it needed to be on the east wall. And I had my father's ashes. It was a family of 6 kids, and they divided his ashes up into six. And I got my portion. And I had
Hmm.
a cobalt blue urn made. It
Hmm.
was made of glass, a cobalt blue glass urn made for him. And I put his ashes in there, and then I put his picture on it and so forth. And she says that needs to go on the north end of the room, whether it's on a shelf or the desk, what have you. Well, it was after I made those changes that this impetus, if you will, came upon me that I need to do something with this book.
The book.
Well, there's
Hmm.
also a counseling session where the gal says, you know, you talk about all of these things that are going on that you need to deal with. Why don't you make a list? Write them down. That way you get them out of your head
Yes.
and you don't have to really think about them. And then as you complete them, cross them off. Well, I have a
I
list of
do that. I do that with everything in my life. I have to have a list for everything in my life. I don't know if it's OCD or whatever it is, but it works for me because there's nothing that feels as good as crossing that off the list, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I've got 12 items left out of 13.
Good.
But the book will go off the list here coming in September, I'm hoping, among other
So
things.
exciting.
I've got some lawn work, I've got some wood to split, and I've got more cleanup in the house. And that's another aspect I'd like to talk about in reference to Feng Shui.
Sure.
We collect a lot of stuff,
Yes.
and we can certainly put the room, let's say that we spend most time in my case, the studio, we can put everything in the right positions. Okay, my desk, my work area is facing east and that kind of stuff. But then there's all the boxes full of, I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of books from doing these interviews.
Sure.
I have a plan for that. But then I also have several smaller boxes and boxes and boxes of all of these little, I guess you might call them tchotchkes or knickknacks that I've collected over the years. Even going back to I still have my 8th grade yearbook, believe it or not. I don't know why. I just do. Anyway, there comes a point, doesn't there, where, first of all, I am never going to pay someone to store stuff. If I've got that much stuff, I need to get rid of some of it.
Well, that's good. That's a great step because I deal with a lot of people who buy storage units to store their stuff that they never look at again.
Yeah.
So good, 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 good that you at least have a very set boundary.
Yeah.
Yay.
And I'm in that process right now where, in addition to that, the radio station that I work for was sold back in December, and we had to empty everything out of the old building and move into the new one, which is one room instead of an office space. I mean, we were in an office space, former dentist's office, that had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rooms plus a break room plus a lobby and a receptionist area. We're down to, I kid you not, the room I'm sitting in right now. That's it. There is nothing else.
Yeah.
So I took home, and I couldn't believe how much stuff I took home that I had accumulated there over the 16 or 17 years that we had worked in that building. It's amazing what you can collect. Oh,
It is incredible.
It's crazy.
The
So
stuff
now
I've seen.
Yeah. So I'm going through that process because I have all these containers that I filled with all of these different things. And so now I'm pulling one container out at a time. I'm going through it. Okay, this goes into the shredder pile, and this goes into the archives pile. Oh, these are reel-to-reels. These need to be transferred and made digital, and I can get rid of them, and so on and so forth. And slowly but surely, I'm working my way through all of this stuff. That aspect, that process that I've described, that's part of Feng Shui in a sense, is it not?
Oh, it's a huge part. I mean, I get called in for three main things. Sometimes people call me in because everything's going phenomenal and they just want more of it. Great, but that's not normally the case. I get called in for problems that are financial, problems that are relationship issues, and problems around health. Those are like the three big ones, you know, that when I sit down to talk to a client, I say, you know, if you could wiggle your nose, you know, like Sabrina the witch and make your life better, what three things would you want to make your life better? And it almost always revolves around better health, more money, better opportunities, a better relationship. I don't have a relationship. I'm single, I'm divorced, whatever the case may be. And almost always what I start to look at in their area is the clutter, because clutter takes away opportunities. So I can give you a really quick rundown. On my Instagram, I do a lot of infographics, so it makes it super clear for people, and people love that because they're like, oh, there's a little house, there's an attic. So like clutter in the attic is mental clutter up here. Think of your body as your house, which is why I say everything is so intertwined and so related. If there is a lot of clutter in your attic, if you have no idea what's up there, a lot of times you'll have a lot of clutter in your mind and in your head. If there's a lot of clutter, you know, if I cannot open the door to come into your front door and those piles of shoes are behind the door, if there's just stuff everywhere, if, you know, our son played lacrosse all through college, if the hockey and lacrosse and all that equipment's just thrown out there and those stinky, smelly sneakers and all that stuff, anything that blocks your front door, it clutter-wise represents a blockages to everyday opportunities.
Mm.
Anything that's at eye level, your desk, your kitchen countertops, your bathroom sink, all of that also blocking opportunities for everyday things in your life. So it's like challenges on a daily basis.
All right.
And then whatever's on the floor, subconscious. So
Okay.
basement or floor, subconscious.
Now,
Yeah.
here's what's a suggestion in reference specifically to money.
Mm-hmm.
It was suggested, and we did follow the suggestion, take a Ziploc, and she suggested $5, but we put 2 5s. And then adjacent to the front door, if there's a carpet, slide that Ziploc under the corner nearest the front door.
Mm-hmm. So I think she does a different school of Feng Shui. There's several main schools.
Okay.
Some of the things intertwine, but based on how I hear you working with directions, my guess is that she was trained in compass. I was trained in BTB, which is a more Western Feng Shui, because most people are not going to put their swimming pool in the front of the house, you know, which is where water is most auspicious. So instead, I work with Western based homes. But what she's referring to, there's multiple ways that you can do that cure. The way that I was taught is you take a red arrow out of construction paper and you just, you know, create an arrow shape, and then you glue 9 quarters to it. Also put it in a Ziploc bag because that just keeps it, you know, safe from the elements. And you put it under your front doormat facing the front door. And what you are doing is intentionally welcoming money into your home.
Now,
Because
the
that front
outside,
door area. Yeah,
outside
outside in
doormat.
the outside doormat.
Okay.
Mhm,
That will be what I
You're
will do when I get
welcoming
home
money
tonight.
in. Yeah, you're welcoming money in. And
Yep.
again, a huge part of Feng Shui, just like any modality, is your intention, right? I mean, you're setting the intention, and it's not just about, I want to be rich. It's, I want to welcome prosperity into my home so that I can A, B, and C, provide for my family, you know, have better opportunities, whatever the case may be. So what I always teach my clients is how to phrase it so that it is beneficial to you and your family in there. Sure, you can say, hey, you know, I want those Prada boots that I talked about a while earlier. Sure, you can say, hey, I want to have enough money. But what you're really asking for, how are you going to get those boots? You need opportunities, you need clients, you need a job, you need something that's going to give you what you need in order for you to be able to go and get those boots. And then I also always tell people you need to work with all the spaces in your house, not just one. We use something called the bagua, which is a tool like a tic-tac-toe board. I don't know if she showed you that or not. Here, I probably have one right here in my yeah, because my card deck has one. So this is a bagua map. So most people's front doors line up right here with the career area. So that's why, again, you're very intentionally welcoming money into your career to work on your whole house. But we also have the health area, skills and knowledge, relationship, how you're perceived, fame and reputation, wealth, family, helpful people in travel. My office is in the helpful people in travel area of our house. That's where I'm sitting right now. Well, what do I need in order to have wealth and a great career? Helpful people. You interviewing me, clients hiring me. I mean, you can't just ask for money and wealth without working on everything in your house, right? So that's what I love, is that I'm trained to walk in and I can kind of see the different areas and see what may be blocked, what may be missing. Some people have areas missing out of their home. Not everyone's home's a perfect square.
Right.
So how do you remedy that? You know, it depends on the situation. And then everything depends upon everything else. I had this sweet client. I loved her so much in Sedona, and she wanted a new partner. She was divorced. And I went to her house and she's like, I don't know. I meet these men. They're wonderful. I can't get them to stay. I can't get another partner. And I'm looking around and her house is in decent shape. And I go, what's under your bed? Is there anything under your bed? She goes, oh yeah, my divorce papers and all my letters from old boyfriends and presents from old boyfriends. And I go, well, honey, that's why no one's hanging out in your bed. Your bed's already full of people. Like, you know, that energy is there from a divorce and from old lovers and from old boyfriends and old gifts. And I'm like, well, that's why no one else is coming in. It's full. So we cleared everything out from underneath. And last I heard, she was in a very successful relationship and quite happy. So, you have to make room. So clearing the clutter and getting rid of the things that no longer serve you allows new things to come in. Otherwise, it just doesn't. You know that. It works with its energy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
you
Now,
have to let go.
and of course, my personality is such that I have to get the structure down. Now you say a red construction paper, but if it's anything red,
I like red. Yeah, I mean, as long as you can make an arrow out of it. The
you
point is
got
to
it.
create an arrow shape. You can take an old red envelope or a red, any kind of red piece of paper that
Okay.
you can create an arrow out of and then glue your quarters, your 9 quarters onto it. Yeah. And again, that's just the physical manifestation of a transcendental cure. It's obviously a transcendental cure, but the making it helps put that intention and ground into that intention so that you're amplifying it. It's
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I I know that you talk about, that like, for example, this other a guest that I had on is dealing with what you refer to as the compass method. And the frustration for us is that the house that we live in, the 2-room cottage that we live in up in the wilderness above Santa Barbara, is not positioned north, south, east, west. It's off center, you know? And I'm thinking, okay, that probably doesn't matter nearly as much as just where you place things in the house, as you've already described.
The way I was trained, you're
Mhm.
correct in
Yeah.
what you said. Because no house is perfectly positioned usually. Um, so I work with the interior of the house first. And then I obviously do take your surroundings into effect. I consider everything inside and outside. But if you work with the inside, if you work with the 3 main areas, your bedroom, because you spend about a third of your life in there, your kitchen, kind of the heart of the home for everybody, and your office of wherever you do the majority of your work, then you can still create a beautifully aligned space, even if it's not perfectly positioned on a plot of land.
Hmm. Alejandra Brady is my guest. We're talking about her book, the title of which is I Just Can't Make This Shit Up. I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the program and sharing with us. Is there a final message you'd like to share with our listeners as we wrap this particular segment up? Love to have you back.
Oh, thank you. I would love to be back. I've so enjoyed our conversation. I would just like to let people know that so many of us are waking up right now, whatever that term means, but we are becoming more spiritually aware. And just know that it may not always be easy, but I feel very strongly we're all here for a purpose. And just trust that you are finding your purpose, trust that you will find the right people, trust that you will find a community, and trust in yourself and what you're listening to or hearing or seeing or feeling, whatever your gifts may be. Just trust in those gifts and use them to help others.
Well, I can't thank you enough for the insights that you have given on this particular edition of Tell Me Your Story, and I do look forward to having you back again to continue this conversation and talk more about the work and also many of the stories because I place a high value, and this may sound a little strange to some, but I place a high value on the placement of the PR page that's placed in a book, right? Well, this particular piece was placed within the chapter 10, the letter Joe Cocker. So before we go, tell us about that particular chapter, that level of synchronicity.
So what I'm going to tell you is not so much the letter, but every chapter is a song. If you notice, every chapter is a song title.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother is the one who sent me all the song titles. I was working with a healer because, again, at the beginning, I wasn't trusting, right? So I was working with a lot of really, really wonderful healers who were helping me. And one particular healer at Miraval told me that my mom wanted to come through to me more often, and she wanted to do it through music. And we never particularly, I mean, like we listened to music when I was a kid, but like that had not been our thing. But as I was writing my book and as I was trying to figure out, are the chapters just going to be named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever they are, I got told, no, I'm going to give you the song titles for each and every chapter. And I'd be writing it, and suddenly I would either get something like that, like the letter, which that's the letter from when my adoptive family found, or my biological family found me. So that's what that chapter's about. That's a whole nother can of worms. We can do that another time. Or I'd get words. I'd just get words that then I would have to go look up because I had no idea what song it was. And when I'd look up the title of the song, of course, it was exactly about what I was writing about at that moment. So every single chapter is a song that my mom in one way or another sent to me after she passed. Obviously, this is after she passed.
Right.
Whether it's just words and I had to go find the song title, or whether she gave me the title, or whether I just started hearing music in my head, and I'd be like, oh, Evil Woman. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what these people call me. Sure, we'll title this one Evil Woman. However it came to me, those were all a gift from her. Yeah. So that's why all those are song titles. And that's interesting that that's the way it showed up for you. I had nothing to do with that, so I would not have known that happened. So that's very interesting.
No, and again, it's one of those things that I actually I look for, and I wasn't going to remove it from the book until we got to the interview because I didn't want to lose the place. It's a bookmark, basically.
Yeah.
And it's there, and I always think about the universe's planning. I have no plan.
I don't anymore. I thought I had a lot of plans, but it's, they've upended me and taken me in their own direction. I'm like, okay.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Well, Alejandra Brady, I want to thank you so much for giving us so much time here on the program. This has been wonderful. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation where we can continue on this path. And I thank you so much. And our best to your 4 rescues and your husband, and to continued success. That's one of the things that I have been a firm believer in, and you sort of alluded to it earlier. My philosophy has been for the last 44 years in doing this, and 45 in this business. This is not my goal to be successful. My goal is to make you successful, and in turn, I become successful. Right. But my intention is not directly to be. And based upon what I've seen of some of the quote unquote successful people in the world, not sure that I want that notoriety. I think I may want to maintain a certain anonymity, but thank you.
Agreed.
I have 3 final questions for you that I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
Before I do, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices. To help make your dreams come true, we are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And then we're here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., following the news here. And we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. We podcast, believe it or not. Yes, we do. And it's the entire interview that you will get in the podcast at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations across the internet. And you can watch these interviews on YouTube. We hope that you will subscribe and also select notifications so that when a new interview, a new conversation is posted, you will be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and to be entertained as well as inspired as well to do more in your life. And if you'd like to support the work we're doing, you want to be a part of it financially, we would be so gratefully appreciative. We have a PayPal account that is there for your security as well as ours. And we ask that you put in the email address of richard@richarddugan.com when they ask you, so who are you sending this to? We hope you'll do that and take the time to spend time going within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place, listening to that still small voice. And with all of that being said, we now turn to our final 3 questions. I used to announce it as if we were doing a game show, but that got a little corny, so I just keep it simple. Okay. Who is Alejandra G. Brady?
Oh, good Lord. That's the question.
I
Okay, you
personally
couldn't
like the response. I love that response I get from people.
Oh my goodness. Well, hopefully at this point in my life, I hope that I am someone who is here to be a light worker and a light for others and to help others on their spiritual journey. However that manifests. For me, it's through Feng Shui, through the book, however I am meant to be. Other than that, the easy answer, wife, mom, rescue dog mom, uh, world traveler. I love to travel. I love, love,
Mm,
love to travel. Foodie,
mm.
all those things.
Now, I think I know the answer to this next question, but I'm hoping it goes beyond what I'm thinking. What gets you up in the morning?
Well, I mean, obviously, I know what you're thinking. It's going to be the mission, right? Whatever my mission is on this planet at this time. But I think just the excitement of seeing what the day holds for me. Honestly, I just think it's really fun. My father-in-law, when he passed, I was told that he was going to send me. It's a little thing, but it's a really fun thing. He sends us dimes, like just random dimes. You'll find one in a bed that's made at a hotel. And I was in Aspen all week, and I was walking down the sidewalk, and I remember thinking, because it's Father's Day weekend, he hasn't sent me a dime in a while. Why haven't you sent me a dime? And an hour later, there was a dime. And then on Father's Day, I got into an elevator and there was a dime. So that's the kind of stuff that actually gets me super excited and why I love to get up every day. It's like, what is going to happen today? How do I get to interact with the other side today? So yes, it's about helping people too, but I love my personal interactions with my loved ones, my spirit guides, everybody that's on the other side that guides me. I just think it's really fun. I really do.
Hmm. Final question.
Sure.
What was your best day?
The day I had my son,
Hmm.
that really was. It
Well,
was scary because it was dangerous, but it was amazing when we heard him cry.
mm.
So that was the best day. And then watching him get married, I guess that would be the second best day.
Well, Alejandra, thank you again. Alejandra Brady, the book entitled once again, I Just Can't Make This Stuff Up. And it is Overcoming Fear and Accepting My Spiritual Gifts. And that's something that we all need to learn to do. We all have them, and they're
Mhm,
all different, and they
mhm,
all work together
mhm.
like the cogs in a finely wound watch, if you will. Swiss watch, maybe, or maybe a big Ben, depending upon your choice of metaphors. Again, thank you so much. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. To my friend Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.